Good day. Welcome to another lesson on our Entrepreneurship Master Program. Today we're looking at the skills program, building a learning organization. And the topic today is how do you conduct outcome-based assessment? Basically, it could be assessing learners in terms of, or employees in terms of their performance that they expected to perform, or it might be maybe on their studies or their learnings that you assess learners if they have achieved the outcomes that you have set for them. So assessing learners or employees, they feature more or less the same concept. It's just that with the training, you need to be an accredited assessor. So you must have the expertise, the experience, and you must be accredited to assess learners for accredited learnings. And then in the job environment or in the company environment, you don't necessarily have to be accredited, but if someone is assessing anyone in the organization, they must have assessment skills. Basically, they must have the experience on what they are assessing. And if you're assessing employees, there must be an agreed, call it terms of reference in terms of how you're going to assess the employees. Similarly, if you're assessing learners in a educational environment, you need to make sure that the learners know what they will be assessed on, and they've been given the resources for them to study or to work on so that they become competent in whatever thing that you'll be assessing them on. That's on the learning side. And on the job performance side, or duties, when the employees are performing their duties as well, that side, when you assess the performance of employees, first there must be a performance contract in place that you have agreed with the employee to say, look, for this year or for this month or for this quarter, these are your targets that you need to achieve. Then this is the assessment tool that we're going to use to assess your performance at the end of the quarter, the month, or the year. And if you achieve this percentage, it means you would have not performed. If you achieve this, you would have performed. If you achieve this, you would have matched your maybe your stretch target, whatever the assessment criteria you're going to use to assess the employees. Those things are very, very important so that you don't get to a year-end, month-end, quarter-end, and you start the assessment process and the employee doesn't understand what they will be assessed on, the criteria that's going to be used to be assessed. And then, but going back a little bit, most importantly, employees must be given tools or information or opportunities to perform the duties that they're supposed to perform, that you're going to assess them on. Because it will be unfair if you don't give the employee the tools, the responsibilities, and the environment that they can perform their duties that you're going to assess them on. It becomes a little bit unfair when it comes to the employee, and they must know what they will be assessed on. Basically, it's their key performance targets. Because as employees, at the beginning of the year, you set your targets to say, as the team or as the organization, this is what you want to achieve. But now, let me take you back a little bit, because before we get to assessing the employee, first, an organization must have its strategic goals to say, this year or the next 5 years, the next 3 years, then maybe in the next 12 months, this is what you want to achieve. This is our strategy. This is where we want to go as an organization. Then from the strategy, then you need to operationalize the strategy. So you need to have what they call operational plan to say, we want to achieve this. This is our vision, mission, and all those fancy things. This is where we're going as an organization. And here, now, for this year, here's the operational plan. Meaning, these are the activities that we need to conduct or to perform for us to achieve the strategic objectives. So once you have the operational plan, then it cascades down to the employees or the team. might not have employees, it might be directors only, or it might be 2 people, or even if you are a single person, then that operational plan will be sitting on your head to say, these are the things that you need to achieve. So that now it will be on your performance plan, if we call it that, or your performance agreement, depending in terms of your organization, what do you call it? So you need to have a performance plan which is linked to your operational strategy. So if maybe you're a bigger organization, from that operational plan, then the activities that needs to be conducted from the operational plan, then they are allocated to employees. Employees, they need to know what they need to achieve within the organization. So they'll have their key performance areas, what is expected from them. And that's what you're going to conduct assessment on. And then you can't give employees the activities without giving them the necessary budget or the resources to achieve those key objectives. So you need now, you allocate the employee the activities that they need to perform for that financial year, and those are they need to be communicated to the employee, and the employee need to sign off on those to say, I agree, these are my targets, or these are the activities that I need to perform in this financial year, and these are the measurements, how I'm going to be measured to say if I achieved or I didn't achieve. And then from there, the employee must have the target, the resources. Because they have the targets, now you need to allocate the resources. If they have to travel, if they have to entertain customers, if they have to develop new products, that needs to come with the resources that you have allocated to that employee. Because it would be unfair to allocate activities to the employees, but you're not allocating the resources that the employee will have to utilize or to use to achieve the targeted objective. So there must be resources. It can be in terms of equipment, it can be in terms of call it funding, or maybe a budget, or whatever it is that is attached to that activity that you have given the employee. Then there must be an assessment criteria that you're going to use to assess that employee. And all this needs to be communicated to the relevant employee or the team members. And there must be a sign-off on what is expected, those activities. Obviously, the first must be sign-off on the strategic objective, and then the sign-off on the operational plan, the sign-off on the personal performance plan or performance contract or targets. The employee must sign off, and they must know how they're going to be assessed. So you must discuss the assessment instrument that you're going to use on this employee to say, if it's a 5, you must have conducted 10 trainings and 100 learners declared competent and. So those are the kind of instruments that you will be using to assess these employees. And once you have those instruments, then you set the timelines in terms of when the assessment will be conducted. Is it quarter? If it's an annual, let's say it's for the year, there might be most organizations to half-year midterm review. There will be a review to see where the employee is in terms of their targets that have been set, and then there will be a final assessment that is done at the end of the year. And also there must be, on the other side, remember with the employees, there must be a stick and a carrot. So if you have set up the targets for the employee, you have set up the instruments that you're going to use to assess them, you have set up the date in terms of when they're going to be assessed, they must be on the other side so that they can perform. That's the stick side. There must be a carrot side to say, if I perform, what do I get? So some organizations, obviously, depending on the outcome of the assessment, some organizations, they'll say, if you reach this score from the assessment, you get a performance bonus, or a target bonus. And if you reach this score, you will only get an increase, and the increase is dependent on the level of performance from that employee. So there must be an outcome or the benefit that the employee will get from performing at a certain level. But those must be clarified and outlined from the beginning. So that when you enter into that contract, remember as well, it's a moral contract between you and your employees to say, if we perform, this is what we're going to get. So when you're doing what they call the outcome-based assessment, it's about the outcome. What do you want to achieve? Rather than the just assessing based on theoretical things, to say you came to work, you were here the whole day, you did this and this, but which are not measurable. So the outcome-based assessment is based on the outcome that needs to be achieved by that specific employee. So you are assessing the employee based on the target that you have set. And yes, sometimes the targets are soft targets, like maybe the 360 that you do within the organization, where the employee, the colleague, what do you call it, the colleagues, customers, the managers, and the employee, they assess each other. That's called 360. Everyone assesses each other. That's a 360, and in those kind of assessment are a little bit soft. There's no necessarily a tangible outcome that you can see, but the others must be based on hard targets. Hard target meaning this is the activity. This is maybe you need to recruit 10 customers over a period of 12 months. Then you are measuring. If you recruited 10 customers, then you get a 4 or a 3. If you recruited 15, then it becomes a percentage. Let's say if you recruited 15, then you get a 4. If you recruited 20, then you get a 5. And if you achieve an average of a 5, this is how much salary increase you're gonna get. This is how much bonus you will get, depending on the organization. But there must be clear benefits for the employee to achieve the target that they've been set. And it's also very important, we're going to get into the assessment of trainings and the learning in the learning environment. But for now, we're still on the assessment on the job training or on the job performance, where you are assessing employee based on their performance and contribution. And it's also very important to make sure that the person who's assessing the employee must be competent in that field or must have the necessary experience for them to conduct the assessment. Because sometimes if you have highly competent employee assessed by somebody who's not competent, then they might be mismatched, they might not be understanding how they need to assess this, and as well as you might find that they don't assess them the way they're supposed to assess them. Remember, sometimes you can assess the employees based on the outcome. What have you achieved? Here are your targets. Have you achieved the target, the hard target? No or yes. But sometimes petty managers or people with lack of experience or who are not competent, they might be petty in their assessment, where they're worried to say, on this day, so you came late, you booked yourself sick or whatever it is. They might be assessing them with not focusing on the outcome that the employee was supposed to achieve, but focusing on petty issues. And that can cause unhappiness or can demotivate the employee. So make sure that you build a culture within your organization to assess employees based on, like, it must be outcome based. What the organization wants to achieve from strategy, operational goals, and the annual plan, and then the performance contract. So those things must always be linked. You must not be maybe digress from the main goal why you have set up the organization. You have set up the organization to achieve the strategic goals. And is the employee performing according to the company culture? One. And then is the employee achieving the goals the way they're supposed to, in a call it ethical way? Because sometimes some employees, they will achieve goals in an unethical way, but you need to make sure that you have that culture of good ethics within the organization. Are they achieving their goals in an ethical way? Even though you are based, as I said, you must be based on the outcome, but there must be ethical how you achieve the goals. It must be within the organizational culture that the employee is operating in. So you shouldn't measure employees only on the hard targets. There must be also the softer target. That's why, like in large organizations, they'll tell you they are using, call it balance scorecard to assess the employee performance. So the balance scorecard, it balances different things. It balances the soft targets, which are relationship, culture, you're living the values of the organization, and on the other side it also look at the hard targets. The employees achieving the hard targets that they're supposed to achieve. So using what they call a balance scorecard, it balances that. There's a certain percentage given to those soft targets, and there's a certain percentage that is given to the hard targets. Because if you are only using the hard targets, it might encourage wrong behavior or unethical behavior from the employees, and they might not live the values of the organization. And now talking about the unethical behavior from employees, now in the news we have the Standard Bank employees that were actually measured on how many accounts they opened with their customers. So you need to open the account and you activate the account by depositing money into that account. And that account, it was okay with the technology and all that. Standard Bank made it easier for employees to open an account for the clients, but the clients were supposed to activate the accounts by depositing money into that account. And it was a cheap. I think the Standard Bank strategy was trying to bank at the unbanked, to make it easier for people to open bank account. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the fee was about 6 rand, whatever, to run that account on a monthly basis. So they were trying to target new customers, the unbanked. But these employees, what they did, they opened this account because it's free to open the account. But to activate the account, the client is supposed to deposit money into that account. And this Standard Bank employees, what they did is they opened those accounts using the details of the clients. Then to activate the account, they deposited their own money into those accounts. And those accounts were activated, and they became the accounts that are activated and contributed towards their performance target. So the value that they were getting for achieving the targets, it was more than the money that they can deposit into those accounts. So they were getting very good bonuses. So they deposited it, and the clients didn't even know that they have an account with Standard Bank. And when it was discovered, obviously the employees were fired and all that, and they lost the CCMA case. So the employees were gross dishonest, and then they were even, I don't know they call it in the banking sector, they were disbarred. They can't work in a position of trust within the financial sector. And I just read recently they also lost their appeal, because they were appealing to say they must not be disbarred or something from working in the financial sector, but they lost that case as well. So from here you can see that measuring employee only on hard targets can encourage wrong behavior. So you must use it's encouraged that you use the balance scorecard, where you also look at the ethical behavior, are they living the value of the organization and all that. So they need to know that their performance is not only based on hard targets, but also on the soft targets, how they behave and all those things, and then you get the clients to also rate them. Because if the clients are rating the employees, then you would have known that this client didn't open an account, whatever. So, but if you're not using a balance scorecard, you might miss certain things and discover them a little bit later, like in this case of Standard Bank. So conducting outcome-based assessment is not only on hard targets, it's also on the soft part. You need to make sure that you use a balance scorecard, meaning it's balanced. It's not only the hard targets, you also have the soft targets. Okay, and also when you're conducting this outcome-based assessment, the assessment must also be moderated, meaning, okay, depending on the size of the organization. If it's just you or two people and the founder or the director is the one who's doing the assessment, it can be generally be moderated, but the performance must be moderated, meaning once the supervisor or the immediate manager conduct the assessment with that employee or the team member, then that assessment, it needs to, you look at the overall performance of the organization, and you assess you moderate the assessments, call it the performance reviews. They need to be moderated to ensure that the process was one fair, the employees were fairly assessed, and the assessment process is reliable, and it's legit in terms of it's what the employee has achieved. Because sometimes supervisors have vendetta against other employees and all that. So without an independent person moderating the performance, then you might find that other employees are given higher ratings than they deserve, or there are others who they don't like within the environment, they are given lower performance ratings. So that now it can demotivate other employees. So you need to make sure that when you conduct those performance assessment, or when you're conducting outcome-based performance assessment, those things are moderated. And it's similar. This concept, it comes from the training environment, where after the assessment, they need to be moderated. So even if it's a one-man show, even because I encourage entrepreneurs, if you want to build a sustainable organization, you need to have call it a board. It doesn't have to be a paid board. You might find a mentor that you in the same space, ask them to be part of your advisory board, use your accountant, maybe any other person who is independent, who you believe they can add value to your business, so that you also, as a one-man show, you have an advisory board that will guide you. They will be able to assess your performance, to see you have set this target, you have this strategy, you had this operational plan, and you had this annual plan. How did you perform? They rate you so that it keeps you on your toes. I know you own the business, but if you have people that you are accountable to, that will encourage you to achieve certain things. You'll be able to encourage you to push yourself so that you can achieve the targets that you have promised other people. Remember, when you're making a promise to yourself, okay, people are different. Some, when they make promise to themselves, they make sure that they don't disappoint themselves. But most of the time, it's different when you're making a promise to other people, because you're going to make sure that you don't disappoint those people. So that will put you in a little bit of self-created pressure to make sure that you achieve the performance or the objectives, or you achieve the goals that you have set for yourself. And even if you have 1-2 employees and you are the one who's conducting the assessments, then if you have that advisory board, then you can submit the performance reviews to them to moderate, to see if you are fair in the assessment process, and if you have done it reliably, accurately, and it fairly represents the performance of the employees, so that you maintain that independency, or you have that independent review to validate, to make sure that your assessments are valid. Because it's one of the objectives for doing the moderation, is to make sure that the assessments are valid, are reliable, are fair to the people who are being assessed. So even for the employees, but if you're a bigger organization, they have a moderation committee where they see it, you present the assessments, and they check if the employees have been fairly assessed. So that is also one level, or the important part that you need to make sure that you include in your processes of assessing employees, or assessing performance of employees within the organization. Moderation is very, very important, because if you have an independent person assessing the performance, it's different from the person who's directly involved. You might have your own bias because you're working with these people every day, and bias is it's natural for a person to have some kind of bias. Maybe you might have race or gender or whatever it is that you have. So you might assess people differently. You might not be fair. Even though we all believe that we are fair people, but sometimes you might not be fair when you're doing the assessment. So if you get a moderator person who is independent from the process, but at the same time they have the competency to moderate. Because remember, if you are assessing, I don't know, performance of civil engineer in how they performed in constructing a bridge, and you bring them to me as an accountant with no experience in the construction industry, I wouldn't be able to give you an independent and competent moderation. So you need to give the moderation to competent people as well. It's very, very important. Now, I just gave you the high-level process that you need to follow within an organization if you are conducting outcome-based assessment. Right, that's on the job training, where employees are not necessarily training, but on the job performance, where employees are assessed based on the performance that is expected from them, from the job environment. Now, the same process is similar even when it comes to the training environment. Remember, the objective of this skills program is building a learning organization, meaning you need to make sure that you develop skills that will make you competitive. It will make your business sustainable. It will make your business grow. That's the objective of this lesson, and was mainly focused on small to medium enterprises, and sometimes we have limited skills. While you're not exposed to business, most of people who start in, you might find that you didn't grow in a business environment. There are not many people who grew in business environment. And if you have grown in a business environment, you might venture into a different business than the one that maybe your family or your parents are in. So you will definitely need to learn certain things. You need to learn new things. And even if you have the competency, but you need to be able to train the employees that are working for you. So you need to build that culture of training your employees to make them, one, highly competent. Because if you have competent employees, then that gives you a competitive advantage. You can be able to go out there and be competitive, because your employees will be able to provide quality product or goods and services, whatever that you're providing. So without you focusing on the training side, you might not be able to be competitive. You might not be able to provide a standard quality product. You might not have a succession planning, because if you don't train, you have a supervisor that knows the job. But if you don't, you're not building a learning organization or a culture of training. If you lose that supervisor, the supervisor will go with all the knowledge that they've gained. So with building a learning organization, you need to make sure that a supervisor is able to train and impart knowledge to the people that are reporting to that supervisor, so that actually the supervisor must be training the people that will be able to replace him or her if they decide to leave. That's the culture that you need to bring, because most organizations fail because of skills trade. You find that you're building an organization, you're doing well, but you're reliant on maybe 2-3 people with specific skills. And once those people leave, then your quality, the delivery suffers, your organization suffers. It's no longer the same organization when those people were still there. So to build a proper system that works, you need to make sure that you build a training organization. And now, okay, I'm going to get into the assessment process. But you train those employees, you make sure that you provide them with an environment that they can learn, environment where they can be assessed, environment where they will be rewarded once they've achieved certain things. And like when you're using the case study, the best case study is McDonald's. McDonald's is big in trading. It's a learning organization because they even built their own university, Hamburger University, where they're training people on how to do things the McDonald's way. And they built that system. That's why it was able to expand from the US to, I don't know, now they're in 92 countries or something like that. It's because they built that system, a learning organization where they learn new things, they teach, the organization is structured. When a new employee comes in, within a month, they know what they're doing. They know they can run the store. Basically, you can bring new people into the McDonald's system. Within a month, they will produce the same Big Mac that the other store is producing, because they have proper systems in place to, one, to train the employees, two, to assess them, and three is the reward. They pay them. They're not highly paid, but you find that a McDonald's employee find it difficult to go outside McDonald's. Not necessarily the crew, but I'm saying when it goes higher, supervisors, and you start going higher, you find it difficult to move from McDonald's to another fast food company, because you will be rewarded for achieving certain things from the training perspective and the knowledge of the McDonald's way. So now, even you as a small business, for you to be sustainable, many businesses, I know there are other reasons why businesses fail, but one that I believe in personally is that as SMMEs, we fail to develop systems. And one of the important systems is making sure that you have succession planning in place. You can be replaced. You know that you have systems that are well documented, and so that the business is not reliant on you necessarily. Even if you are not there, things can be done. People can deliver without you. You can go to, I don't know, on holiday to Dubai, whatever. You can relax there, and your small business can still operate without you, because you'll have the systems in place. And one of the key things to make sure that the systems are in place is training. You need to make sure that your learning and development processes are up to scratch, because as the new employees come in, you train them on the culture, train them on how you do things. And training, obviously we spoke about how you design the learning material and the things that, how you train your employees, how you identify their needs and all this. After you identify their needs, then you develop programs that you can put in place to make them competent. Remember, training your employees, not only one, you're doing them favor. Obviously, if an employee is in an environment where they are learning, they get motivated to work harder, and they see that there is progress. But it's not only for the employee, it's also for the organization. Remember, as you train them, they become better on what they do, and they start doing things better. Then you start having a system that works, where your employees are delivering quality product, and it becomes, not necessarily quality, but quality obviously, but maybe consistent product that you're providing. Because I believe you don't necessarily have to always provide quality product. There are some markets that are not looking for quality product, they're looking for quantity. So sometimes you get fixated on providing quality product. No, some markets, they just want quantity because maybe of budget and all those things. They just want to eat. They don't want a fresh Albani bread. They just want fagu moya, because they just want to eat bread. So the price and the quality is not, the price is the determining factor. The quality is not necessarily, yes, they will love to have a quality bread for argument's sake, but because they don't have the budget for it, so they don't care much about the quality, but they just want quantity. So that's on there. So, but you'll have the employees that will be able to provide your customers with constant product in terms of the expectation, the taste, and all that. So not all products are quality, but as long as when your customers come to you, they know they can get a constant product, or the quality or the service is constant. They know what they can expect when they come to your organization. And you can achieve that by doing many other things, but the key things are, one, developing systems and processes where things are done consistently. There is a system that your organization is following. 2, making sure that you build a proper learning environment. A proper learning environment for your employees. By building proper learning environment, obviously you need to make sure that the learning materials are relevant and all those things. But the key thing is what we're looking at today, the assessment process. All right. So 1, you need initially to allocate what you expect the employee to learn in this financial year. So yes, they still have the objectives that they need to achieve, the targets that we spoke about earlier, and you're still going to assess them on those targets. That's one side of the business. The second side of the business, encourage your employees to learn. You must identify the skills that are required within your sector. You come up with a skills plan. So first you do the skills audit. What is required in terms of skills in your space, right? Then once you identify those skills, you assess your employees to see what skills do they have. Then you develop a training plan to say, these are the things that you need to develop yourself on, training, whatever. And once you have identified the training, now that is their target. That's the key performance area when it comes to the development side of things. And now, either you or with your HR, if you have HR, or there can be discussion if it's a one-man show, is the discussion between you and the employees to say, how are you going to do the training? Is it a formal? Is it on the job? And whichever the correspondence, whatever it is that is suitable for that employee. Then you set how are they going to be assessed? Right. If it's a formal training, obviously it will have your levels in terms of NQF levels. Is it NQF level 1 to 8 or whatever it gets to 9, your masters, whatever. So you have the NQF level that the employee will have to attend or achieve. It can maybe attend conferences and whatever. So you decide on the development or the training method that you're going to use. Even for yourself, you need to identify the skills gaps that you have and develop your training plan to say, these are the skills that I'm missing. These are the training courses that I'm going to attend. If it's you're going to run them internally, then you need to make sure that, 1, the employees are provided with resources. You might not be paying for their formal learning. Maybe if it's not the policy or the organization cannot afford, then you find an alternative way to provide them with that training. Provide them with the resources. 2, and then facilitate the training process for them to acquire the skills. And then 3, make sure that they are assessed based on what they've delivered. And then once they have assessed, and then if they achieve the learning, 1, they'll get the certificates. But 2, what does it mean? There must be a carrot. You remember earlier we spoke about a carrot. There must be benefits that they will get for them achieving a certain level of competence within the organization. Then once they achieve that, then you reward them accordingly as agreed with your employees and your training plan. So if they achieve the training plan, it's one of, it could be hard target or it could be soft target when it comes to training. I mean, some skills are soft target. Find that they need to improve on their customer service. Then you need to get the ratings and all that and see where they've improved and all those things and reward them accordingly. And once you start building that culture, then you become a learning organization where the employees, even after they obtain the competency, they will have that interest to develop themselves further, where they see new things. Then they start implementing new things within the organization. That will improve your organization and take it to the next level and make it even more competitive. But ultimately, it's how you're going to assess the training programs that you're running. So if you're doing it internally, obviously you need to have an assessor. But the assessor must be, if it's a formal training accredited, the assessor must have 1, the competency, 2, must have the necessary qualification, meaning if wants to be assessor formally, if it's a QCTO or CETA qualification, the assessor must be accredited. And most of the time, okay, not most, but sometimes the assessor becomes the facilitator. Facilitator is the person that will be running the program. So will be facilitating the program. But sometimes the facilitator is not the same person as the assessor. But the assessor can be the facilitator because they have the skills, they have their accreditation. But not all the time the facilitator can be an assessor. So it doesn't necessarily mean if somebody is facilitating the training, it might be one of your trusted employees or competent employees, but they might not have the necessary accreditations or skills to assess the competence of an employee. Then you get an assessor to assess. Then the assessment process goes like this. One, the employee must prove that they have attended the facilitation classes because it works with hours. Generally, okay, maybe with the CETA, and then I think QCTO is also more or less adopting the same approach to say 70% of the learnings must be in practical, like at the workplace, doing things, and 30% must be, call it in class, theoretical. So let's just look at it to say, do you have evidence to show that you were at workplace, you've learned certain things at your workplace environment, which is 70% of the time. And then depending on the credit. So, and then 30% is class, call it studying, might be writing formatives, it might be attending classes, those kind of things that you are in class or you are attending, you're obtaining knowledge on one side, and the 70%, as I said, is on it's on the work environment. So the assessor will sit there, look at you call it portfolio of evidence. Meaning, if you are at workplace, you need to show how many hours you spend on this topic that you are studying. Practical experience, and your supervisor must sign off to say you spend so many hours on this, doing this and this and this and this, and based on their experience, you are competent. That's the first component on the practical side. Then on the 30% side, you must do the learning, you must prove that you have learned certain things. And also the main thing that you use in that side is maybe attendance register. You look at the attendance, did you attend this sessions that you said you attended? Did you do the formative assessment that they've conducted within that? And all those things. So that's on the 30%. And once your 30, she assesses the 70%, the work environment with the supervisor signing off in terms of your logbook, whatever, to show that you did spend those hours that are required based on the NQF level that you are doing and the credits that you're supposed to achieve. Remember, with credits, if a credit is 1, that means you need to spend 10 hours on that outcome. So if you are doing a course, let's say it's computer literacy, and the credit is 1, it means you need to spend 10 hours on that course. 70 hours, it must be on the 7 hours must be on the practical side of things, doing basic computer, learning how the computer, you use it, sending emails and all that. You need to have a logbook for that. And the 3 hours, it must be 1 on studying, doing formative assessment, attending classes. So you must have proof that you've learned, you've done the formative assessment, and you attended classes for the 70%. And then once the assessor is happy with that, and you have what you call it, sufficient evidence to prove that you have done those things, and that evidence is reliable. Okay, it must be reliable, it must be accurate. Then the assessor will say, I'm happy with this. And then depending on the type of a course that you're doing, there is what you call a summative assessment. Meaning, summative assessment takes into account the things that you have done. Then that's the final test. Okay, summative assessment, it could be maybe with a project. You do a project. You say you know how to basic computer, to use the computer. Then the assessor will come, okay, yeah, let's see. I'll observe you using the computer. Then you log in, you do your things, you do. Then they give you a rating to say either you are competent or you are not competent. So that's the final summative, or it could be an exam. I know QCTO is moving towards the exam, and then I know CETA is a little bit flexible on the summative side. It could be a written one where they give you a summative assessment, and then you write, you submit, then your assessor will assess if the evidence that you have given is sufficient or not. So now with the summative assessment, then after the assessor assessed your summative assessment, and they either declare you competent or not yet competent. It's not because they give you, I think generally they give you 3 times. They assess you. If you are not yet competent, the assessor will give you feedback in terms of the things that you need to fix for you to be able to be declared competent in that space, and then they will give you again and again, so until you become competent. That's the assessment side. On the training side, and you need to make sure that you understand the assessment process that needs to be followed. And most importantly, as I said, like in the performance environment, you need to give the learner the material or the resources that they need to learn, or the employee in this case, because this one is not theoretical for students, purely students, but I'm looking at the employees as learners. You need to give them the resources for them to study, to be able to prepare for them to take assessment. Give them environment where they will test what they are learning, meaning the 70%. They must practice what they're supposed to be learning. Give them time to attend the classes if they have to do the homeworks and all those things. You must give them that space. So give them sufficient resources for them to do that. And before the assessment, they need to agree on the assessment processes, that we are happy to be assessed in this way. When assessed in this way, this is what is expected. This is the type of evidence that we need to submit. Then they sign with the assessor to say, we are ready for assessment. And the assessor does the assessment, and at the end of the day, it's either they are competent or not yet competent. That's how you do the assessment in the learning environment. You need to make sure that, and you need to make sure that it's done the way it's supposed to be done. And as similar to the moderation on the employee performance side, it needs to be moderated by an accredited person, meaning the person must check if the assessment was fair, valid, and all those things, and there was no unfairness when it comes to the assessment of the employees. And once the moderator signs off, you submit the assessment to the CETA. CETA do their external moderation, and they certificate the learner. Then the learner will have the certificate, which is accredited certificate. That's the process that is followed when it comes to assessing the learners or the employees who are doing formal training. And it's what is called outcome-based assessment. It's based on, one, the performance at the work environment and the performance in class and the final assessment that they have done. Then they get certificated. Okay, now that was the assessment on the training side of things, where you're doing formal training. But one thing that I want to add as well is, when you're designing your organization and what you want your employees to learn on, you need to make sure that you also apply what is called recognition of prior learning. It's an acceptable concept in South Africa. Employees need to be recognized for the experience that they have. Sometimes many people didn't have the opportunity to go study formally. But you might find that even though when you're doing your skills audit, they might not have the qualification, but you might find that they have the experience to do certain things. So recognition of prior learning, it's also a vehicle that you can use to assess your employees to see where they are in terms of the skill. So what you need, you also appoint an accredited assessor. He comes in, assess based on the experience, they need to provide, again, the portfolio of evidence to show that they have done certain things, they have experience on certain things, and they provide portfolio of evidence of what they've done, the seminars, the conferences, and all those things that they've attended before. And then based on the evidence that they've been submitted, the assessor will look at the outcomes that are expected from that qualification or from that uni standard or skills program. And, excuse me, if they provided sufficient evidence, then the assessor might declare them competent on that skills program or even on that qualification. But there might be gaps that assessor will see to say, no, but even though they have this experience, but they still have 1, 2, 3 gaps that needs to be covered. So now you design the training program based on the gaps that have been identified by the assessor, so that you make them fully competent on that, basic computer or making the burger. This guy can make a burger, but maybe he lacks on health and safety issues. He lacks on customer service and all those things. If you are in a fast food environment, for argument's sake, then you design the learning based on the gaps that have been identified. Then the learner will go back and work on those. It can be on the job training, or it could be formal. If it's on the job training, then the assessor will assess. After they've done that, then they will have to submit the portfolio of evidence to the assessor to say, assessor, you said these were the gaps. That's why you couldn't declare me competent. Please, here's the portfolio of evidence to supplement the initial recognition for prior learning. Then once the assessor assesses, then you find them competent. Then you submit the assessment to the relevant CETA or QCTO. Then they can be declared competent and they can get the certificate. But keep in mind that as a small business, as much as the employees will be chasing certificates and all that, you must be chasing competence. You must train your employee for competency, for the outcome. So even when you are assessing them, you must be assessing them on what they can deliver, not how many certificates they have. So when you're doing your skills audit, you need to make sure that you audit it. Yes, take into account the formal qualification that they have, but also look into the practical outcome that they are achieving. Because you want to develop competent employees, not certificated employees. This is very, very important for small business to ensure that when they design their training plan should be to make the employee more competent rather than getting the certificate. So you might have different objectives between you and the employee. The employee might want the certificate, interested in, I've got my certificate. But you as an employee, you must be interested in an employer. You must be interested in the qualification. Not the qualification, but the competency that comes with that qualification. So the employee must be competent so that they can put you in a better place as an employer or as a company that you are competing with other institutions out there. So the main thing for developing your employee is to improve your performance, is to improve your competitiveness, is to improve your product. So make sure that you keep the important things, the priority. Priority is not certification, and obviously you cannot not give the employees their certificates because they are competent. They still have to get their carrot, which is their certificate. But you need to make sure that whatever programs that you're running, ultimately you should be able to see the improvement from before and after. There must be a difference. And there must be new things that they teach in the organization. Because remember, learning is something else. You learn how to do things differently and all that. So that must contribute towards the organization. So on the RPL side, you must recognize what the employee has already learned or the experience that they have, and identify the gaps that they have, and then design a training program based on that. And you need to assess them as a whole for them to be competent for that qualification or skills program or unit standard, depending on the training that or the space that you are in. So you need to make sure that you recognize prior learning, because we know working with the previously disadvantaged people who didn't have an opportunity to go to training. So if you just assess them based on a hard qualification or theoretical qualification or formal qualification, you might put other employees on further into a disadvantaged environment. So you need to recognize the prior learnings that an employee comes with, to make sure that you are fairly treating all the employees, and you assess them fairly. Because if you don't take into account their prior learning or their prior qualification, you might be assessing them unfairly compared to other employees who had the advantage of going to further their studies. Some, they might be competent in delivering results, because you're not looking at the results or the outcomes, you're looking at the certificate. You might find that the one with the certificates are earning more, or they're getting more bonuses, or you recognize them more than the ones that don't have the qualification. So the recognition for prior learning is one concept that our government has brought in to say you need to recognize the experience and reward them accordingly. Okay, all as well, we must just remember that conducting outcome-based assessment is not a standalone assessment that you can do without basic pillars that should be there. One, there must be proper leadership in terms of management. Management must understand what it takes to conduct this assessment, right? And two, there must be communication between the person who's being assessed, the assessor, and the organization. So there must be open communication, and the expectations must be communicated. That's the second pillar for conducting a fair and valid outcome-based assessment. It might be on the performance of an employee on the job, or on assessing an employee on a training program. The same thing, they require the same pillar. Leadership, there must be communication. There must be accountability. Remember, the facilitator or the training provider must take accountability for the training program. There must be learnings that are coming out of the training program. Improvements should be made if the training program is not meeting the needs of the learners. Because remember, the learners are the focus area. We need to focus on the learner. So the training provider or the facilitator must facilitate the learning in a way that it makes sure that the learners achieve the objective of that program. So if the program is not achieving the things that it needs to achieve, it needs to be reviewed, and corrective actions need to be put in place to make sure that they achieve the learning program and the training program achieve that. So even the training programs themselves, they need to be assessed to make sure that in future they achieve the objective. But now we're still on accountability. So the facilitator or the training provider must take accountability if the learner, they don't achieve the objectives that they're supposed to achieve. Yes, it could be the learners are not focused and all those things. That's a different story. In this case, I'm talking about if the program is not achieving the things that it's supposed to achieve. It needs to be reviewed. It needs to be assessed regularly to make sure that it is designed in a way that it achieves the things that it needs to achieve. Now, on the learners, they also need to be accountable. They need to attend the classes that they need to attend. They need to study. They need to do what they're supposed to do. They need to submit the portfolio of evidence. They need to make sure that they take the final assessment, whichever assessment that they do. So they also have an accountability. The employees stroke learners, they also have their accountability. And you as a host employer, you also have an accountability. So now you need to provide the learners with an environment where they can learn, they can practice what they are learning in class, give them an opportunity, give them resources to execute what they need to execute. Even in the performance side or on the job performance, give them an environment where they can perform. You give them the resources that they can execute. So you need to make sure that you are accountable. One, if you are not providing that, then it becomes a challenge. So you need each and every party to this program, they need to make sure that they deliver. Facilitator must deliver the facilitation. A learner must deliver themselves and the portfolio of evidence and take the assessment. The assessor must deliver the assessment. The moderator must do what they need to do. You need to do what you need to do, right? And then there must also be an assessment, a 360 assessment of everyone involved in this process, where you are assessing the employer. You as the employer, the organization, have you done the things that you could have done, or you have area of improvement? Then the learner, did they do what they're supposed to? Facilitator, same thing. Moderator, same thing. Assessor, same thing. That did you do what you're supposed to do? You need to assess that and measure the performance and reward everyone the way they're supposed to be rewarded. Obviously, the employer will be rewarded with performance and maybe further getting the grants and whatever payment from SETA if it's a learnership and all those things. Remember, there are rewards for you as a host employer. You can access the grants, you can access learnerships and all those things. But the most important thing is being rewarded by the employee, because the employee now will be competent, will be able to perform better on what they're supposed to do. Reward for facilitators and assessors, obviously, is recognition. It's also compensation for their effort. And then for the learner, you'll get the certificate, you'll get the necessary recognition within the organization. So everyone involved must be, one, assessed, but two, most importantly, be rewarded. So these are pillars. So one, we said leadership. It must be led by the organization, and they must be clear, and people must lead on their area, because the assessor must lead the assessment, facilitator must lead their facilitation, the learner must lead the submission of the portfolio of evidence, the employer must lead the program. There must be someone who's taking leadership in this environment. That's the first pillar. Second pillar is on communication. There must be open and transparent communication. On the performance side, in terms of the formal training, or on the performance side, on the job training, open communication. There must be accountability. You have everyone in this environment needs to do what they're supposed to do. The facilitator needs to do what they're supposed to do. The learner needs to do what they're supposed to do. Employer must do what they're supposed to do. And there must be delivery. Everyone must deliver what they promised to deliver. Deliver yourself, learner. Deliver the portfolio of evidence. Facilitator, deliver the facilitation. Employer, deliver the environment and the resources. And then at the end of the day, you need to be able to measure if the employee achieved the performance or the learner achieved the requirements, meaning was the learner competent at the end of the day. If the learner was competent, is the learner achieving what they're supposed to achieve in the learning environment? And then if it's on the job performance, did you achieve the strategic objectives of the organization? Because the main thing is for the organization to achieve what they're supposed to achieve. So have you achieved that? So you need to always measure each project or each activity that's taken into within the organization must be able to be assessed and measured and rewarded. Whoever that needs to be rewarded, they must be rewarded. The reward must be appropriate for the actions that they were supposed to take, or the duties and the responsibilities that have been allocated. So that's on the assessment. It needs to be within an environment that is conducive, it's within these pillars, and everyone will be able to perform. Because one, as I said, it comes from the objectives that needs to be achieved. Two, there's an operational plan or training plan, whatever that needs to be, how it's going to execute it, right? Three is the performance plan or performance agreement. Who's going to do what? You need to do what you're supposed to do. And then four, once everyone is done what they're supposed to do, there need to be an assessment. Once the assessment is done, there must be measurement. We have assessed, and then this is how we measured you. you're going to get a bonus, you're going to get a salary increase, you're going to get a certificate, you're going to get a promotion. It's what is being agreed on. It doesn't matter what the reward is. But if you meet this measurement, this is what you're going to get. It's either training certificate, promotion, as I said, and whatever it is. So in the learning organization environment, there must be proper assessments that are being conducted. It can be performance assessment on the job, it could be training assessment, but they follow the same principle. But make sure that you perform assessment the way you're supposed to, because without doing that, one, if it's a training, you might be violating the standards and the requirements of QCTO or services SETA. And on the other side, if it's a performance evaluation or performance assessment, you might demotivate other employees if you're not conducting your performance or your performance review or your assessment the way you're supposed to do them. So assessment within an organization is very, very, very important. And as I said, one, it must be conducted by a competent person, and it must be reliable, and it must be fair. Everyone must be assessed using the same standards. There must not be one standard for the other and a different standard for the other. All must be assessed based on the same standard, which that standard must be fair. And once the performance has been assessed, it must be moderated to make sure that an independent person or an independent eye look at the assessment and say, okay, this assessment is valid, it's reliable, it's fair. Then once the moderated is moderated, then you can issue the certificate, you can pay the bonus, you can promote the person that has achieved the measurements. That's assessment in short. And I hope that you can take this lesson and be able to implement it within your organization. Make sure that everything that you do, you assess it, but based on principles that we have discussed in this lesson. I thank you.